Our next panel, I think, is going to be very enlightening because there was mention made earlier today of all of the talk about the national press and not hearing very much about local media. And so we've titled this panel, Do You Serve Your Community or Your Audience? They're not the same. And to moderate this panel, one of our own, Dr. Debora Wenger, who has extensive experience in broadcast journalism, news management, and as a media trainer. I recently attended the Online News Association's annual convention in Chicago. And when I introduced myself to others from different journalism schools, the members of those faculties, nearly all of them said that they knew Debora. So she's got quite a reputation out there. She holds a PhD in journalism from Kingston University in London and was recognized as a top journalism educator by NewsPro magazine in 2017. She has played a key leadership role here, previously serving as interim dean and assistant dean for partnerships and innovation. Before joining Ole Miss, she was associate professor of media convergence at Virginia Commonwealth University and has served as the editor-in-chief of Electronic News, the official journal of the Broadcast and Mobile Journalism Division of AEJMC. And she was the steward of newslab.org for many years, which she took over from its founder, Debora Potter, formerly of CBS News, PBS, and NPR. And we relaunched newslab.org today. Again, we urge you to check that out. It will be the home for all of the activities and content, not only from the Jordan Center, but also for the Mississippi Media Lab and other activities of the School of Journalism and New Media. So please welcome our panelists who will be introduced, along with Professor Debora Wenger. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. I'm really delighted to be here today with three distinguished panelists. I think this is going to be a wonderful and enlightening conversation. So let me get started so we can hear from them with some brief introductions. We'll start here on my right with Andre Natta, who's Executive Director of Birmingham Watch, part of the Alabama Initiative for Independent Journalists, or Journalism, excuse me. The site covers Birmingham and Jefferson County, with a primary focus on covering government performance and transparency, education, the environment, economic development and opportunity, as well as health and social equity. Right next to him is Wes Muller. He's a staff writer for the nonprofit Louisiana Illuminator, an independent, nonprofit, nonpartisan news organization with a stated mission to cast light on how decisions are made in Baton Rouge and how they affect the lives of everyday citizens, particularly those who are poor or otherwise marginalized. And then next to him is Jeremy Jones, executive producer at WMC-TV Action News 5 in Memphis, a station in the 51st biggest media market by size in the United States, with a total population of more than 666,000 TV households in 27 counties across 3 states. It's a lot of coverage area for sure. But perhaps even more importantly, we should note that Jeremy is an alumnus of the School of Journalism and New Media here at the University of Mississippi. Woohoo, come on, we need some clapping. And I also want to sort of acknowledge that Jeremy is, still on the clock. He kindly came here on a work day. And where are you headed in about 3 hours now?
We're going to do a sit down with CeCe Winans tonight for a tour launch that she's doing in Memphis. And so you will see me leave the stage in like a matter of minutes, sadly, because that's all been in the works for weeks. And And
Yeah.
sorry.
But kudos to you for still wanting to do this. So I really think we're going to hear some very diverse and compelling perspectives on the question that I think the organizers posed in the title for this session. It's really fascinating. And that is, do you serve your community or your audience? And so, Andre, let's start with you. When you hear someone say serving your community is not the same as serving your audience, what does that mean in your work?
Well, in my work, it is a loaded question because everybody is my community, but not everybody is my audience. I'm going to go one step further. A person who's in my audience is somebody who can support me financially and who can go ahead and help me raise awareness about some of our bigger systemic reporting. Whereas somebody in our community, while they may be part of that audience, they may not be able to support me financially, but they may be able to do other things, help spread the word, and may benefit more from the work that we do, as well as help us figure out what we're supposed to be doing in the first place. Like, they are some of the best sources in terms of being able to listen and being able to understand where we should be looking, because we have limited resources and limited availability.
Thank you. Wes, I'll pass that on to you.
Yeah, I guess you'd mentioned, our outlet is kind of focused on serving marginalized communities. And with that, but we primarily cover state politics and the state legislature. And so I'm kind of always battling, like, even my own outlet and editors. Yeah, they're asking me, why didn't you speak to the Speaker of the House or some other top official? And I'm more of like, because I wanted to talk to the head of the plumbers union, So that is how I look at the community that I'm always trying to branch out to. Whereas our audience is not, our audience is a subset of the community. And I'm always trying to grow it into the rest of the community, because the plumbers aren't really reading our website and our news. Speaker of the House certainly is. So I kind of make it even my personal mission to touch those and reach out to those who don't subscribe to our newsletter.
So, Jeremy, how do you define the community that you serve with such a large potential footprint? How does that change for you?
I mean, how do I define it? Well, I mean, when you look at the audience and I mean, I think it's a matter of reframing. Is there a separation between the two? Because audiences are getting smaller. I mean, I know that, fewer people are watching local TV news. And so the community that's still there are the people that you've got to cater to, right? I mean, so I don't think that they have to be two different things. I think it's just all about it and your approach and the decisions that you make. I mean, with the audience shrinking, so are our resources in newsrooms. And so looking at how do we make sure that there's diversity of voices, and that we have community members inside making those decisions when we're covering something. I mean, I can say that in Memphis, we all live there. I mean, there's 75 people on our team. We all live Memphis or right outside of Memphis, and it's nice because we all represent a different community, right? And so when they have a place at the table, we're able to make those coverage decisions based on what's going on in their individual communities. But it's difficult. I don't have a solution to anything, but it's something that we talk about every morning. This morning in the morning editorial, you've got 3 reporters, but you're covering this huge area. How do you maximize that?
Well, hopefully we'll find some solutions
Yeah.
today. Yeah. So I'd love each of you to share an example of a story that you pursued because it mattered to your community, even if you knew it wouldn't perform very well for the wider audience. And then sharing how you measured impact for that story would also be really valuable. So I'll just say, whoever wants to go first, dive in. If you've got one at the top of your head, would love to hear it.
I mean, you know, how do you measure the impact? I mean, it's feedback from the community. I think about like a story we did recently. It was in Halls, Tennessee, which is a really tiny town on the fringe of our viewing area. And somebody had reached out from there, and long story short, they had hired a pastor. The pastor had convinced them to turn their church into a nonprofit and register it with the state. And a few months later, he came in and said, I'm shutting down the church. You're not tithing enough. Oh, and by the way, my wife and I are now head of the nonprofit, and you don't have access to any of the money. And this was, you know, a very tiny spot outside of our main DMA. And I have a team of reporters. We call them the impact team. And this reporter pitched this story to me. And the first thing I said was, are we going on the way to Halls? Like, you know, like I like the story, but we've got to be bigger than just this one church that got, you know, swindled by a pastor. And it turned into a bigger story about what do nonprofits know about, you know, who holds the purse string of their nonprofit, who's on their board, who makes those decisions, what can the state do and not do. And so the impact would be after we aired that story, and we tracked down that preacher, and they went through mediation, and the church members got their church back. But then we also started hearing from other little small town nonprofits who were like, we had to reconvene the board because, you know, we weren't even thinking like who was on the board, who had the purse strings. And so that's how we measure more. Maybe it's not ratings or impressions, but it's just impact and them calling back. And let me tell you, Halls, Tennessee loves Channel 5 right now, and we're hearing from everybody there, you know, for every little thing. So, I mean, that's just one current example off the top of my head.
It's a great
Ratings wise, it did really well because of marketing. And, you know, you talk about a pastor, you know, we had video of him screaming, I'm shutting down the church, you're not tithing. And so it worked in TV world, but the impact is where we, you know, enjoyed it.
feel good.
Yeah, we felt good about the impact.
I guess my best example would be an oil spill in Louisiana, and it's actually been one of the world's largest oil spills, and probably none of you have heard about it. More than 13 million gallons of oil. It's still being cleaned up. It's in Tangipahoa Parish, Louisiana, right now, and I've been covering it. Seems almost like once a week, it seems. There's something new always going on. It's turned into a criminal investigation run by the EPA. It's just been really big to that community, but not so much to the rest of the state or the rest of the nation. Even much smaller spills got more coverage than this one, and I can't really put my finger on the reason why. But it's affected the immediate small town, majority Black town, Roseland, Louisiana. The parish as a whole, at least I would say like the southern half of the parish, because it flowed downriver. And the air emissions from the fire lasted for 2 weeks because it was an explosion, plant explosion. Fire lasted for like 2 weeks, and it sent this large plume of smoke all throughout the community. So there's just been a lot of health problems, and you've had livestock that have died. So it's just been impactful mainly to that small rural community. And I guess the way to measure impact, we of course, we have our own metrics, internal metrics like stored views, that kind of stuff. And we can certainly I can go out and look up, hey, anybody reading my stuff, whatever. But fortunately, our editors and our, national headquarters, they don't really put a whole lot of pressure on us to get more clicks. I've never even heard them mention story views or click throughs. We do have a metric that we follow as far as like our newsletter subscribers. But for me personally, I don't really care all that much, about like who's reading it. I'm just reporting what I feel is important and what other people have asked me to report, or other people say, hey, what's going on with that situation over there? So.
Okay, thank you.
I will rush through two examples. One is one I already alluded to earlier this morning. It would be the waterworks. And in our case, nobody was covering the waterworks when we got started. And one of our freelancers came to us and was like, I really want to start going to waterworks meetings. And our news editor was like, I don't know if we should send them, but I'm kind of interested. And of course, the question came to me about how are we going to pay for it? And I was like, we'll find the money and let's go cover the story. And it turns out that we were covering the waterworks before the state planned to do a takeover and before they went ahead and canceled a repair contract on the biggest dam serving the water system that just had 2 new residential projects built at its base. And I guess in some respects, we were covering it first, and it led to all the other news organizations coming on and referring to our reporting. And it also led to our freelancer being picked up by the NPR member station as a staffer. The other one was a bit more personal. As a site I used to run in Birmingham before. Some of you who are football fans might have heard about a football team that got shut down in Birmingham about 10 years ago at the at UAB. We went ahead and covered it as an actual story about understanding where the money was going in Alabama. And this is the part where I say, if you're not familiar with Birmingham, we're an hour from that football town, and we're about 90 minutes to 2 hours, depending upon how fast you're driving on 280 and if you get caught, from Auburn. We went ahead and just showed folks how much money folks in Birmingham were spending on supporting Alabama football, and the fact that if you supported UAB the same way, it would lead to a similar result, maybe. Success was finding out that the UA Board of Trustees referred to 3 of our stories in the board packet that led to the return of the football team. So it wasn't about metrics or anything like that. It was trying to see what was tangible and how you could actually measure it. And when you have board members saying, who used to say that they never actually read us because we were too small, saying, oh yeah, we read your stories before our vote, that carries a lot of weight.
That's great. And you've all segued to a question I very much want to ask before Jeremy has to leave us. And that is, I'd like to acknowledge the financial viability of many news outlets really does depend on metrics. I mean, how wonderful to work for organizations that don't ask about clicks. But we do know that it's a reality. So how, and I'll start with you, Jeremy, how do you sort of balance that reality with a goal of serving your audience, your community, however you want to characterize them?
I mean, the main drivers for local TV news are breaking news and weather coverage. And so in a lot of ways, the 6 p.m. weather cast pays for my impact team reporter that's going to come in the B-block with the story that matters to the community. And so it's just, you have to look at that relationship. It's tough because like I said, our staff is small and we have to pick stories that people are going to watch. At the end of the day, if you're just shouting into the void and nobody hears you, then what was the point in doing it? But we have enough successes elsewhere that we can provide these resources. Nothing, I think about like when we have to do a severe weather coverage and cut into programming, talk about audience versus community, because when there's a tornado in Oxford and we're cutting into prime time, when there's 900,000 people living in Shelby County, they do not care that Oxford has a tornado. But that is, that's our responsibility. I mean, so like we're going to be wall to wall when it's barreling, into Oxford. There's conversations the next day. How many hours of programming did you blow out? How many commercial breaks did we not get in? And you have to make up that time somewhere. Fortunately, I mean, we do like 11 hours of news a day. So there's a place for everything these days. And so, it's evolving as the audience shifts and and I know I'm all over the place, but I think this too. Advertisers, they care about community. They're starting to really see like how their brands can relate to the stories that you're covering, the communities that they're covering. They care about placement and what it's, and so you can convince them sometimes you want to be a part of this. We do a show called A Better Memphis where we bring in community leaders every day in our 4 o'clock hour, and our main anchors who have been there forever, Joe Birch and Kim Clark, host that show. And community leaders want to be on that show, and advertisers want to be a part of that show. And they're not always talking about positive things in the community. They're talking about societal ills, and they're talking about, maternal death rates. I mean, and so brands are drawn to being a part of the solution. And so it's interesting to watch how things have changed.
So you're giving me flashbacks of when I almost got fired for breaking into programming for a tornado when Tiger Woods was on the 18th hole of the Masters. So don't do that. That's all I.
We broke in, I've been at Channel 5 forever. We broke in on Oprah Winfrey's last broadcast, the last 10 minutes of her show ever. Like she'd spent the whole season building up to that final show. We covered the last 10 minutes with Dave Brown tracking a tornado. And even Dave didn't want to cut in and was like, I'm so sorry. Yeah. So, but community over audience.
Trauma counseling. So in a nonprofit world, I mean, it is wonderful. It doesn't sound like you have to be as concerned about, the equivalent of ratings online, but your funders, I'm sure, want to see impact. And so how are you proving to them the work that you're doing is having impact?
Yeah, we're a nonprofit. We rely 100% on donations. We have no ads, no subscriptions, and everything is free. So that frees us up, the staff, to go and pursue some of the stories that other outlets don't pursue, and that can pay off. We can pick up new communities that might not typically read our stories. One of them, I mentioned earlier, was plumbers. I've been covering legislation that's affecting plumbers. It's a highly regulated field in Louisiana. So it's the donors. As just a staff writer, I don't even know who they are. We have a list of them on the website, a list of everybody who's donated, but there's so many, and it's a lot of like organizations, some of it's other philanthropies, but I mean, we're just primarily a charity, and then we have a stated mission on our website. There was a lot of talk earlier today about core values, so very rarely am I assigned something to go out and cover, or sometimes I might get pushed back for wanting to cover something that might not get a whole lot of play, but that's when I can kind of go back to that mission statement on, like, we need to cover marginalized communities. So that's why I fully support the idea. Somebody was saying this morning, put that statement out there, publish it on your website prominently for people to look at, because they can hold you accountable to it, but you can hold them accountable to it, or your own coworkers or colleagues or whoever.
Push a little bit. So impact, how do your funders want you to prove impact?
I was going to say, I miss the days when I could just go ahead and be in the newsroom and not worry about it a lot, because that's what keeps me up at night is I can tell you currently, I believe it costs last year it cost $4.34 per story that we published. Because I can break it down based on the cost, on the cost of the reporter, the cost of my time to go raise the money, the cost of the editor, the cost of our liability insurance, the cost of our social team, the whole 9 yards. I can quote that chapter and verse. And it scares me when funders wanted to know that in the beginning, but it makes sense. And now it's a matter of understanding, even if I do, I'm kind of the same way. I'm just like, go do what you got to do. I need enough knowledge to know what am I protecting you from. But go out and do what you got to do if it's important to doing the work. But I also have to be able to use that to explain to the larger funders, and to make the case to larger funders, because larger funders are backing out of supporting journalism efforts. We're a little different in that State's Newsroom is a network. And meanwhile, we are about to turn 11 in September. And I am the first person to ever serve as a full-time paid executive director. And so it's partially trying to make the case to explain, what other people said earlier today, how much does it cost to do the work? What does the process entail? It's less about the clicks. It is more about explaining, like, you can explain off email lists because your strategy is changing. You're reaching out for a younger audience, so you're less concerned about getting them on the email list in the beginning. The end goal is to get them in the funnel, to get them to go ahead and subscribe, because then you want to go ahead and convert them into donors. And right now, the impact is, can we increase individual donations? And so far, 2.5 years, I should knock on some wood somewhere around here, we have tripled individual donations to the site. So that in our mind means that we have convinced people that what we are doing is important. And that in turn lets us then go to the funders and go, okay, we still need you to give us money for operating because we don't have nearly enough money, but we can ask for less money on that front and more money towards this special series that we want to do, or this project, or dare we say, as I hinted a few times earlier today, what is it going to cost for us to explore print in whatever form that looks like? So it's a dance. I will probably think about all these. I have worn out my audio transcription on long distance trips, because it's just like, I'm going to forget that. Let's record it and look at it later on.
And I know we've had donors that have like thanked us for our consistency on a specific topic, like personal injury attorneys. There was one year where I was covering all this legislation that they were just slamming personal injury attorneys, tort reform. And so, it was just a big deal in the legislature that year, that session. And the lawyers wanted to see the news. They wanted those updates coming out. So they're, I wasn't doing it for them, but it just happened to be this, okay. I don't know if they donated, but.
So Wes, I do want to follow up. The Illuminator is focused on what is essentially political reporting, and we're keenly aware of the highly polarized environment that we all are living in at the moment. I'm guessing your publication gets accused of partisanship, although you have a stated mission of being nonpartisan. Do you have strategies for counteracting that criticism?
Yeah. Personally, when I'm accused of it, I always, some people just kind of ignore, like it usually comes in the form of an email or a threat or something like that. And I always respond, and always, just kind of like use like de-escalation tactics, or It's like, no, actually, we publish the list of all of our donors online because we get like the George Soros accusation, that kind of stuff. Um, yeah, it's just you just tell the truth and try to be fair and give people enough time to respond to the stories that might be critical of them or investigations that might reveal something about them. Um, and then other times, it's just somebody just wanting to deflect blame a lot of times. But I find that even we are a mostly conservative state. The legislature is a supermajority Republican, but we had, and they credential media there, to cover the floor of the legislature, you have to be credentialed by the legislature. Yeah. So they credential us because we get, we quote them correctly and we always do our best to report things accurately.
So Andre, a major focus of this symposium is the challenge of building trust in journalism. In the about sections of both of your publications, there's language that some might define as DEI focused. How might that affect the way your outlets are perceived, and what impact might that have on trust?
You got that.
Somebody's like, I'm glad he got that question.
I got that. I will tell you, I'll answer it this way. I fought long and hard to finally go ahead and get an exec director position. And when I finally got it, in the first few months, it was very much a touch and go situation. I had no hesitation in leaving the language up, and it's going to remain up on our new website. In part because we're a little lucky in that Birmingham is the blue dot in the red state. It does live into that reputation quite well, so we're a bit insulated in that regard. But also in the fact that my experiences in being in the role so far, folks know we're being as transparent about our process as possible. And so this is what we've long lived by. Carol Nunnally, our founder, made her career on many of the things on that statement. And so I'm not messing with it. Anything that can be done to go ahead and make sure that the people of Birmingham, Alabama and Jefferson County get served with accurate, factual information. And I've had a couple people corner me in public, and they're like, and they'll just start by saying, I want to talk to you about this story. And I'm like, which story? And the response is normally something like, but you should know my story. I'm like, in the days when I was in economic development, I had 9 places to worry about. I'm the executive director of a news organization that covers a county with 35 municipalities, and Birmingham, Alabama has 99 neighborhoods. I will ask you again, which story are you asking me about? And that tends to de-escalate the situation.
So another trust focused question, and either of you please jump in. How do you know, or how will you know, when you've earned the trust of any community that you're trying to serve?
Well, about the DEI thing, not to change it, the question. We don't shy away from it at all. You can go on our website right now and you can see we call it a DEIJ statement policy. I'm actually an executive officer on our national DEIJ committee. And the reason, because people think that it's just about black and white or race, but diversity is so much more than that. The reason I'm on the committee, they invited me because I'm a veteran. So that's diversity is not just black and white. It's background, it's geography, it's viewpoint, it's a lot of things. So, hey, when I tell people that, they shut up. Yes, like you got a problem, me being a veteran on the committee? No, they don't have a problem with it. So,
The trust. How do you know when you've earned the trust of those, what was it, 20 some communities in
35.
35?
I know. Several different levels, like if the mayor and I are comparing baby pictures after we just went ahead and wrote something that wasn't too flattering, that's a level of trust. When neighborhood officers see us or see any of our reporters out and they're offering up story ideas that they weren't even looking for, I think that's a level of trust. I think when folks we got our largest single donation ever with just a note that said, use it as you need. Meaning they trusted us to know that we were going to figure out some way to use the money and not to go and dictate exactly what it should be done. I think that's trust. I think it's them feeling as though they have enough ownership in what we do that they are empowered to tell us when we're doing right and when we're doing wrong. And in fact, technically they do own us. Like we have a board, I run day to day, but if they raise enough issues, everything could change. So we have to be able to go ahead and have very frank conversations and know that it's not personal. Most times, a couple times it's or at least it feels personal, but for the most part, you can tell they understand our role and they're grateful for it. And they're even getting to the point now where they are asking for more ways to reach out and talk to us. So.
Terrific. Wes, how would you answer that question?
yeah, we practice like no surprises, as my editor calls it, no surprises policy or procedures, or where, if we're talking, we do a lot of investigative work. And so we're talking to a source, they might want to be on background or on the record, whatever. Like I always like double and triple check, like, you sure you want to be on the record? Let's make this very clear, and get it down. Make sure you explain exactly what it all means. And that's how I kind of build trust with sources. And then just reaching out to people. I do a lot of I try to do a lot of FaceTime with people, not the app, but actual in-person FaceTime with people and talking to people down into the community. I mentioned the oil spill earlier. Like I go down there. I've been down there probably a dozen times, even though it takes me 2 hours to get there. So I drive in, talk to go to the black church, talk to the pastor over there, just stop at a convenience store on the highway. It's like there's like 2 convenience stores in the whole freaking town, and I'm like, just like pull up, see a guy standing there, like talk to him, and hand out my business card, take that phone number, call them, and then not just calling them to ask for a quote, but sometimes I just call them to say, how's it going? How you kids?
So am I hearing you say that basically trust is earned one story, one community at a time?
Yeah.
One conversation at a time. And you got it's work. It's every day it's work. It's not, I think a lot of people think that it should be easier now, and it's harder than ever.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's really easy just to be like, oh, just send me an email or something.
Yeah.
Or now Zoom kind of gives you kind of an escape hatch sometimes too, but the ability to sit down with somebody and have a conversation and check in on them and let them know your sincere and serious, similar to what was said earlier, we live where we cover. It matters. We're citizens, just like they are. It's not that we take off that hat. That's probably the bias that all of us bring in, but it's remembering that that bias is there while still applying an objective method to doing the work. And making sure that people know that you're doing it, whether they think it's a good story or a bad story, for the good of the community.
And, you know, like a lot of times with print journalists, with print reporters, there's not a lot of personal connection because all they see, you know, people see just your byline. Nowadays, you know, a lot of websites will have your headshot next, you know, next to your byline or at the bottom of the story. And that's kind of a little bit of an improvement. But I think a lot of, like, sometimes the vitriol or the threats will come because they don't see you as a human. They just kind of see you as this name. Right, the media. They don't realize who you are, that like you are, you know, their neighbor, basically. So, you know, what I've been trying to experiment with recently is doing more TikToks where I just kind of like, you know, talk about the story and how I covered it. And trying to like get my face and my personality out there so people will see that I'm a human. You know?
Well, thank you very much, both of you, and Jeremy remotely through the airwaves. It was a great session and appreciate all.
Thank you, Deborah.